Magic Lab on the SOC Radio Network, broadcasting live from our studios in New Zealand, Los Angeles, and New York City. I'm Marie Bargas, also known as the Hollywood Witch, the Pop Psychic, and the Magic Housewife. But tonight, I'm your naughty professor, a magical mad scientist of sorts, and with the help of my trusty lab assistant, pop culture skeptic and guru, Tony Sokol, we're going to be stirring up a nice, hot, boiling cauldron of magic, mystery, and mischief. So, let us show you how to take a whole new look at love, romance, showbiz, fashion, world news, and the secrets of the cosmos through the all-seeing third eye of the future. We're ready to lead you through magical and mystical experiments using ancient knowledge in a modern text. With guest mystics, healers, shamans, and all kinds of fabulous magical people. And you are going to get a chance to get your future read right here.
I'm the infidel, Tony Sokol, and my co-host braved the heat wave in LA, the Hollywood Witch, Marie Bargas, and we'll be joined by filmmaker and voodoo authority, Lilith Dorsey. She authors spellbooks and cookbooks and can bring life to love. And the Witch Fest 2017. Hello, Marie. How are you?
Hello, Tony. Hello, Lilith. How are you?
Hi. I got motorcycles over here, but I'm fine.
Oh, that's sexy. That's okay.
Yeah, we're revving it in.
There you go.
So, Marie, I want to introduce you to Lilith. Before we start, I just wanted to say hi to the two of you. Lilith here in New York is spearheading Witch Fest 2017, and I'd like you to open by talking a little bit about the community in New York.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You know, I'm a hometown New York City girl, Brooklyn native, represent, and it's really wonderful to be able to do this. It started out as a pagan street fair, and it's huge. You know, last year we got tens of thousands of people. It's on Astor Place in Manhattan. You know, those of us who've been around a long time remember Astor Place as the place that had the big cube and, you know, the place to get your hair cut. I actually used to work on Astor Place, too, of all things. So it's beautiful to be able to go back and teach, and I'm going to be vending along with a whole host of fantastic other presenters and performers. It's going to be great fun.
Tell us a little bit about some of the other performers. Who's running it with you, first of all? I believe it's Rhea and Raven.
Star Ravenhoff is one of the main organizers. There's actually a whole council of people that do assist her in getting things done. So they've got a really big organization. My friend, Witch Dr. Utu and the Dragon Ritual Drummers are going to be performing. That's fantastic. They're an amazing Canadian drum troupe that have been friends of mine for, almost, 17, 18 years now. So it's going to be great to have them in New York. It's their first time performing here, and I'm really excited about that. There's a lot of other really great teachers that are going to be there. You know, I'm just very excited.
Who's teaching and what are they going to teach? Because that's what we do here. We teach. We don't teach well.
Right.
We teach underhandedly.
Right.
No, honey, that's left hand.
I'm left-handed. I'm also left.
That's beautiful. Well, I mentioned Witch Dr. Utu's going to be there. He's going to be teaching a class of the Underground Rail, which is fascinating because he lives up there towards the end of the Underground Railroad, and that's a cause that's really dear to his heart, so I'm happy about that. I know Joe Alexander Robichaux is going to be teaching, Christian Day is going to be teaching, Brian Kane's going to be teaching. Let's see, who else is teaching? There's so many. Lady Rhea's going to be teaching. It's such an amazing list of presenters and people that are going to be there. Like I said, I'm really proud to be part of it.
And if people are looking to find information on how to get there and when it starts, where do they go to find it?
Well, first of all, it's Witches Fest with an S. I think that's something that people get confused. So they can search Witches Fest. There's a Facebook page. There's a website. People can already, there's also going to be classes on the Friday before and the Sunday after. So if people want to, those are paid tickets. If people want to get tickets to that, they can go to the website. You know, it's an insane amount of classes this year. Last year it was just one day, the street festival, and now it's all these other things together. So I'm really happy to be there.
I'd like to know. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that I've noticed in the hoodoo and voodoo community is that new people are often confused between the difference from voodoo to hoodoo. Could you explain that to our audience?
Yeah, I think people are very confused about that difference. And it's funny because, you know, hoodoo was really a thing that people didn't talk about, say, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I started, you know, participating in the occult community here in New York. And it was something that was, you know, pretty much passed down from grandmother to granddaughter. And it's more of a folk magic, or some people might call it hedge magic. You know, there's a lot of practical things like, you know, like I put in my book about put a piece of lemon underneath your chair during the holidays to make sure nobody fights, things like that. Whereas if you talk about New Orleans voodoo or Haitian voodoo, that's more of a systemized tradition where there are teachers and initiations and rituals. And don't get me wrong, there's still spells and things like that that go on in those religions, but it's much more formalized and there's a lot more training involved, and it's much more, I don't know, in a lot of ways I feel like it's more effective for your average practitioner because, you know, your grandmother might have told you to eat peanuts to feel sexy, and you might be allergic to peanuts. So some of the knowledge is not necessarily the kind of thing that transfers easily.
I like that. The other thing that is concerning a lot of people is that a lot of people really don't know how to tell if somebody is actually an initiated practitioner of voodoo. I know that there's some people without any ethics who go around and say, I am this and this and this, and people that don't know how to check are paying thousands of dollars. So how do you find out if somebody's authentic?
I mean, I think, first of all, you've got to check them out within the community. Luckily, now we have things like the internet and other things like that, and you can hear whether or not somebody's known for, you know, just taking money from their people or doing negative things. There was one priestess I heard about. She abandoned some people at the airport with some bones in a bag. You know, they got detained by customs, and she just got the hell out of there. So... But that's the kind of story that, you know, if this was somebody you were considering and you talked to anybody about her, they'd go, oh, yeah, she's got a reputation for these kinds of things. And I think that, you know, for all the bad that the internet does, there is some good that it does because, you know, we can really check people out and see how long has somebody been practicing, what's their lineage, you know, talk to the people who initiated them. All of the priestesses that I go to have been initiated for decades, and I've been with them for decades, you know, so it's the kind of thing where I know that they're, you know, respected in the community, and I get along with them too. You know, this is someone you're taking as your spiritual parents. So, you know, if you had a chance to pick your parents, who would you pick? Are you going to pick somebody you don't really get along with or somebody you really love and trust? And I think that that's important. And my best advice for that really is just, I tell people to, you know, light a candle or do a simple spell like that to help you find the best teacher. And I think that's something a lot of people don't think about.
Now, do you have to be initiated in Haiti, or can you be initiated in the United States?
There's a lot of respectable Haitian Vodou houses in the United States, so I don't believe you have to, that's not my opinion, that you have to be initiated in Haiti. You know, people get around these days.
Okay. All right, Tony, you have the floor.
Well, actually, I wonder, is there anything that they can get in Haiti that they can't get here?
There are certain initiations that are only done in Haiti, obviously. And then there's certain feasts and holidays where it's best to go back to Haiti. There's an Erzuli feast in July that people go to do a ritual blessing at the waterfall at Sado. And I think that that's one of those things, you know, you can't substitute a sacred waterfall in Haiti just by going to your local river or your local waterfall. That's going to be a very different energy, a different ashe, as we call it. So those kinds of things do need to take place in Haiti. But again, there's a lot of Haitian houses here in the U.S. I know 3 separate, you know, Mambo priestesses operating out of Brooklyn alone, you know, and that said, a lot of people do travel for their initiations and things like that. You know, if you knew there was a good doctor 4 states away, would you go there? If you knew there was a good doctor, you know, a plane ride away, would you go there? I think a lot of people would. So it's the same thing.
What about physically? Is that like, are there certain herbs or things like that you can only get there that really don't work if you bring them over here?
I don't know necessarily if they don't work, but they're hard to get. In a lot of the other Afro-diasporan communities, a lot of people have taken to starting to grow some of the herbs that only grow in Cuba per se or in Brazil, so people can have a fresh source. Sometimes the freshness of something is very important. So that's more difficult in the States, obviously. But I mentioned before Ashe, which is funny because a lot of people seem to be using it like as a signifier and just shouting out Ashe lately. And it's a concept that's the divine universal energy of things, and that's specific to a place. So when I talk about the sacred waterfalls in Haiti, that's specific to that Erzuli that people do ceremonies for there. Now you could take the water and bring it back, but it wouldn't be as strong as at the source because there's so much more of it at the source, and everything surrounding it has soaked up that energy for, over 100 years plus.
Can you tell our listeners who or what Erzuli is?
Erzuli is the Haitian deity. Most often people associate her with love, but there's a lot of different Erzulis. There are ones, everybody's so gung-ho lately about Wonder Woman. There's an Erzuli Danto that is very powerful protector of women, that is always around women. If women have been wronged, sexually or been abused, she's the one that they approach. So there's a lot of different Erzulis out there. So, but the waterfall one is usually Erzuli Frida is who people are worshiping to there, who's a deity of love.
Oh, well, you wrote the book on love magic.
Yes, you
did. I did write a book about love magic.
I love that book. Girl, tell us about your book.
Thank you so much. It's funny because it was one of those things I always asked people when I met them. I was like, oh, what's your favorite love spell? What's your favorite love spell? Because I always wanted to know. It's something that's so important to people. I've been a psychic for a long time, and when people sit down, most often it's love. Second is money, but most often it's love. And I think that it's so important in people's lives that love is something that everybody's concerned with. And I wanted to sit down and write a book that had everything about love. There's spells in there like traditional Celtic spells. There's Native American influences. There's, the feng shui and other things you can do to bring love into your life. There's a lot of spells in there for self-love because I really feel you need to begin from a place of healthy self-love in order to find a good relationship with someone else.
Exactly. But a lot of my clients don't understand the difference between having a personal concern or, you know what I mean, something with somebody else's DNA. The difference between using a personal concern like hair, a fingernail, or
Right.
any bodily fluids versus just doing a spell using manifestation. Can you explain the difference?
Well, I mean, if you're trying to call in the energy of someone else, and I think this is a very fuzzy area because a lot of times it does, there are ethical concerns when you're talking about, doing a spell on someone. But that said, I've certainly done spells with my partner where I had his permission and a piece of his hair was helpful or a piece of his, I won't say other things. I'll just leave it like that.
Yes, this is a family show.
Okay, yes. But people can use their imagination. Because what you're doing is you're bringing that person's, I mentioned before, Ashe, you're bringing that person's Ashe literally to the spell working, the ritual working. And that way you can incorporate them there, even if they're not physically in your space at the time.
Exactly. Hey, Tony, will you send me some of your hair?
You have some, of course I will, yes.
Okay.
Right away. Actually, I wanted to ask, when you watch Breaking Bad, they break the making of the meth down to it's either a science or it's just a basic recipe. A spell, is it a recipe or is it a science?
It's a science and a recipe. Anybody who knows anything about cooking knows you have to know the recipe backwards and forwards before you can deviate it. So I believe that there's a certain set of ingredients that needs to go into a spell. And those, very often there's no substitutions for things like that. And there's a good reason for that, because part of the spiritual journey is finding those ingredients. Maybe it's something that's very simple. Maybe it's something that's very difficult and you have to use your other psychic senses. What is it worth to you? Are you willing to go to 5 different stores? Speaking of love magic, I remember once I went to 5 different stores for fresh blueberries in the winter for some person I was dating. But in the same way with the love spell, are you going to go to 5 different stores because you need to find galangal? Or are you going to go to make 5 different phone calls until you find, neroli oil? There's certain things that are very helpful and work better in the spell, and that's why they're there. It's time honored, and that's why it's there. But there's an element of science to it as well. Once you understand the rules, once you understand the components, maybe that personally you don't really like primrose, so you're going to substitute something else that does the same thing that primrose has done for you in that situation, because you react better to it. Or maybe it's something that your partner reacts better to, so you're going to use that for the spell. So I think in both those ways, you can tweak it the same way you can tweak anything, or there wouldn't be advancements in science or in cooking. So
okay.
Can you explain to our listeners why certain plant, or every plant and herb, has a spirit? Because I don't think people get that.
No, they all have their own unique ashe. I think you're right. People don't really truly understand that, and how they react to each person is different as well. So, there's certain things when you think about it. There's the shape of the leaves, there's the shape of the roots, there's the place where it grows, there's how much sun, there's how much water. You did my intro, but I have a minor in plant science and botany. So these things are really important to me, like how a plant vibrates. A plant, if you look into it, magically a plant will have a planetary correspondence. It'll have an elemental correspondence. It'll be, this is what happens if you pick it during the full moon. This is what happens if you pick it during the new moon. So there's all these different factors that go into, the thousands and thousands of plants that are out there. And it makes a difference whether or not you're using the leaf or the bark or the root or the oil. All of those things are going to be slightly different. This is why we turn to other people who've been practicing magic for a long time, because if we haven't been doing it for 10 years or plus, maybe we don't fully understand all the elements that go into what this plant spirit is trying to tell us and how it's trying to help us.
How hard is it to get Adam and Eve root in the United States?
I think it's pretty easy. I just saw some, I feel like, somewhere.
Oh my God, you've got to send me some.
All right, next time I come across some, I'll snatch some up for you. I really feel like I just saw some. I just came back from New Orleans, so maybe I saw it down there, but.
Oh yeah, it would definitely be there. Yeah. Tony?
I actually want to know if spells have a taste to you, and then I want to ask about cooking.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, spells do have a taste, There's how it's going to react with the environment. Let's say if it's an oil, how is it going to react when you're wearing it? I had a friend who used to put on love oil every time she was going to a date, and then she'd get on the commuter train to go meet the person, and all the, people would be rubbing up against her in the train station and stuff like that. So yeah, she realized, if I put attraction oil on and then go into a crowded place, this is what's going to happen. So they do have a taste. They have a sort of primal scientific pheromone level, if you're talking about a love spell or any other spell, really, because it does affect your own body and the bodies of those that are around you differently. So yeah, they do. I wouldn't eat all of them, because some of them have things in them you shouldn't eat. But that said, my book is full of recipes, my Love Magic book, and I have a cookbook too, that are full of recipes that you actually can eat in order to bring about magical change in your life.
Oh, so tell us about the taste of magic.
The taste of magic.
When you're
kind of
cooking
magic? Love magic?
We're sticking with love magic because it's a lovely day, except a little bit too hot in LA. So yeah, what can you cook for love?
Oh, there's a lot of different things you can cook for love. Obviously, the sweeter things, desserts is what comes to mind. Chocolate has been an aphrodisiac. The Central America, the Mexicans have used chocolate. They actually also used to use it as a war drink, as a power drink, spiced up, the Aztecs, spiced up with chilies and things like that. So, there's lots of different dessert and also sweet kinds of things and spicy things, too, that you can do for your love magic. One of my simple spells is just to put ginger in your pocket, but adding ginger to spice up your love life. But ginger in any recipe will sort of heat you up. And that's not just, traditional Celtic magic or Wicca or African magic. That's cross-cultural. Even the Asians use ginger in their food to sort of heat up the bodily energies and things like that and heal you if your energy is too low.
Okay, I'm also from Brooklyn. I just want to ask,
Yeah.
can you make a love cannoli?
I would love to make a love cannoli.
I love cannoli. Can you send me some love cannolis?
What would be in the love? Well, chocolate would definitely be in the love cannoli. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And then cinnamon, it's funny, now science tells us now that things like cinnamon and allspice and nutmeg, those are all, those pumpkin pie spices that everybody loves so much in the fall, which for us are also the herbs for Oshun, which is African and New Orleans voodoo, and a Santo Lukumi deity for love, basically uses all of those herbs and spices. And science tells us that, that's what makes people aroused. That's why we all love that pumpkin spice coffee and everything. So I would put those pumpkin spices in the cannoli. I would put chocolate chips in the cannoli. Pistachios, that's a thing that people put in cannoli that's also been used for love. Nuts in general, because of, again, science tells us they're full of niacin and other vitamins that are good for our reproductive organs. So I think that, chicken and the egg, did we eat it because it was good for our reproductive organs, or did we eat it because magically we knew that this would help us, want to have lusty thoughts and coupling thoughts and good times together?
See, kids, magic is good for you. It builds bones.
It is.
I have a question. One of the ingredients that I use often, particularly in cases of breakups, is Balm of Gilead, based on a recipe from the Queen of Sheba. Have you worked with that?
That's wonderful. I like that. Yeah. No, I love the Queen of Sheba. I do. She's one of my favorite things. And Balm of Gilead is wonderful. That's another one that, later Christian magic seemed to have taken from us because, Balm of Gilead, it's just such a holy and sacred herb, and it really is very healing. So I can see why you would use it in breakup spells and why that it's a thing for that. And the Queen of Sheba is just, I think, especially for people of color and women all over, that she's just such a powerful figure because her story has handed us down across the years very few women that seem to manage to be paragons of power, even despite all, we thought we have odds today. Think about how many odds you had hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and to survive and thrive under those conditions and to still be revered and seen as the powerful women they must have been, totally, I have great respect for that, and I think that is something that we can call on, because I think, again, a lot of things people don't realize is, if you've got an energy like that has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, with people honoring it and figuring out how to honor it properly in order to get the desired results, that's going to be stronger than something somebody thought up 5 minutes ago and tried to sell you on the internet.
Well, in love filters, my favorite wine to use is from Ethiopia, and it's a honey wine called Makeda, after her.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Oh,
I love that.
It's just wonderful. I would love it if you would quote me in one of your books now. I'm such a big fan. Little Marie uses Makeda honey wine.
That's beautiful. My first book goes on and on about how the Ethiopians drink more mead than anyone in the entire world. So if I revise it and update it, I'll put in your thing about Makeda.
Thank you. No, I know that. That's why I said it. What
was I going to say? Oh, I can say more about that, though. I think that, again, a lot of pagans are familiar with mead. And, when I started making meads, which for those who don't know are also honey wines, you use honey as the fermenting thing as opposed to sugar or maple syrup. And those I would do ritually with herbs and spices for the different Orisha or the different deities, and then use that as ritual wine. So, you could have a recipe on the table, or you could have a recipe in a bottle that you drink. That's your sacred mead or your sacred wine.
Have you been watching American Gods?
No, not yet. I'm getting ready to binge watch it when I have time.
Because the character of Bilquis, which is based on the Queen of Sheba or Makeda, they just used the name Bilquis. She's fascinating. She's awesome. You got to watch it.
Okay, I will. I will, definitely. No, she's one of my favorites. And that's on my list. I'm just, for some reason, there seems to be all this amazing television. I'm very happy about it, as someone with a television degree, in addition to the rest of these things,
I have a film degree, too. Tell us about what you've been doing in the media.
Well, let's see. What have I been doing?
Well, you have music. You have the film, Bodies of Water, which I was actually going to ask about later, but I actually am fascinated. I want to find it. What is voodoo transformation?
Yeah, it was a documentary I made about my priestess Miriam of the Voodoo Spiritual Temple in New Orleans, 1428 North Rampart. I just came back from there yesterday. And what I made it before Katrina, but what I wanted to show was the connection between the New Orleans voodoo religion and the water, because to me there's such a connection between the Mississippi and the energy that the Mississippi has and how that affects the religion. And I wanted to make a documentary from someone who was a member of the temple, from someone who practiced the religion, as opposed to so much of this documentary stuff that's out there done by people who know nothing about things that I really think can't do it justice in a way that a participant can do. So it's an experimental film. I mentioned the Dragon Ritual Drummers. It has music by the Dragon Ritual Drummers in it. It does have my priestess Miriam, and like I said, it was shot in New Orleans right before Katrina.
Okay, so tell us about how the drums work with trance in the film, because I haven't seen it. I want to, but it's a film that changes perspective.
Yes. And I think that the drums are a very important symbol in the religion, both for trance and for transformation. For a long time in New Orleans, as in many parts of the country, drumming was banned. Any kind of drumming ritual was illegal, and a lot of these ceremonies had to be carried out secretly, But the drums, they can play the sacred rhythms. It's like, this is what we need in order to achieve a certain element of the religion, because it's like, how are you going to call people up how are you going to have a party if you don't have the right music? So it's the right music. It's the music that they're used to. And a lot of the rhythms that we do in New Orleans are based on, rhythms from hundreds of years ago. This is something. And also rhythms that are unique to the city themselves. So it's a sort of blending, a gumbo, just like the city itself, of the rhythms. And those rhythms, there's a lot of, I don't want to say repetition, because it's not really repetition, but it's sort of circling around certain rhythms and certain beats that allow a person to go into trance and to have contact with the Loa or Orisha during a ceremony.
Okay, do you know anything about gamelan and the way it's used in spirituality as well?
Do I know anything about what?
Gamelan?
No.
Okay. I'll go into another thing. I was going to try to compare it, but I'll do.
Can you tell our viewers, or our listeners, what a Loa is and what an Orisha is?
A Loa is a spirit. It's usually spelled L-O-A or L-W-A. Traditionally, that's what the spirits or deities are called in Haiti. Some people don't like to call them spirits because they think of them as a separate class, and some people don't like to think of them as deities because they're also still Christian at the same time. But you get the idea, pretty much, that it's like a god and a goddess, but there's one supreme god and goddess for a lot of people who also practice that religion, which I think is confusing, especially to Americans, who many of us are, not too fond of the Christian church, especially the Catholic Church, and don't still worship in that way. But a lot of people in Haiti are still also Christians, so they the deities are called Loa, and they're not really saints. They're sort of higher than saints, but I think that's the easiest way for people who are unfamiliar with it to associate it with. They are individuals, as in the case of Shango. We talk about him being the 400 BCE. He was a king in the Yoruba kingdom. So you can trace it back in the stories and actually find this person from, what is it? It's 2000 now. So almost, 2,500 years ago, this was a person who embodied all these qualities that were the Ashe of fire, the Ashe of passion, the Ashe of drumming. And there's been worship of him since then. So in Haiti, he would be a Loa he's mixed with a divinity called Ogun, so he falls under the pantheon of Ogu Shango, but he would be a Loa there. Or if you look at the Orisha, who I mentioned, which literally that's in the Lukumi or Santeria tradition, that translates to Orisha, which is Ori, which means head, and Sha, which comes from the same root as Ashe that I mentioned, which is a sort of universal force of spirit or energy. So it's the combination of your head and this universal force of spirit and energy combining together. And the Orisha, again, in the same way, are deities in the pantheon. I mention it specifically here in relation to New Orleans because in the Voodoo Spiritual Temple where I was trained, we had 2 Santeros when we started. So a lot of Orisha did end up in the pantheon of worship because that's the native deities from these people who were there and who they were worshiping. And it's a very all-inclusive kind of temple, so there's a lot of different deities. But for people who are listening who might understand a system where there are Orisha, yes, we have Orisha that are worshipped there, and we also have Loa that are strictly Haitian Loa that are worshipped there.
I don't know why, but I'm compelled to ask you about Damballa.
Okay.
It's like I just saw a snake go by and I'm like, Damballa, is that you? What have you been working on with Damballa? Because he's like all over your energy right now.
I mean, I just came back from a festival called Snake Oil Festival, so.
Oh, hello.
On the nose, very good. Once again.
There was a lot of snake oil energy there, let me tell you. And like I said, I went to the temple. My priestess is a giant snake named Aida Wedo, who, for those of you who don't know, is the wife of Damballa. So,
yeah.
And Damballa's. Yeah, is that what you're getting?
Just like, hey, what about us? What about us?
Yeah. I got a lot of snakes around me. I do all the time anyway, though. A lot of houses believe the first, spirit that comes to you during possession is the one that rules your head. And in a Haitian ceremony, I had Damballa come down first. I feel a strong connection to Damballa. I definitely do.
That's why it's there. How do you feel about the correlation between Damballa and the Greek myth of Medusa? I know that in the book Priestesses by Norma Laurie Goodrich theorizes that Medusa was actually a North African queen, and the serpents in her hair were actually dreads.
Oh, that's fascinating. I like that. I like that idea. I mean, it's interesting to think of it, because Damballa is such a peaceful and paternal force. It's interesting to think of it in this feminine force that I don't necessarily believe Medusa was bad, but history has us, demonize, who she is because of these snakes and because people turn to stone and things like that. But
well, actually, she was symbolic of the divine feminine, first of all, combining the serpent in spirit, which is Kundalini. And the legend is that when she made people stone, she was actually making people hard for another reason.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. That sounds great. I like that.
That makes sense to me. If you look at Medusa's features, they're Afro features.
Of course. No, I think that's very true. I think that there is this power and this sacred force that comes from Damballa that is really feminine.
But what fascinated me was they were dreads. I just love that image. She was wearing dreads.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love that. I totally love that. And I think, again, you can see how a very different story emerges with this narrative that's, to me, more plausible than the one that was shoved down my throat, all my life, that I think that it could very easily, we're talking about Queen of Sheba. It doesn't matter who you're talking about. Hatshepsut, there's such a long list of African queens that got demonized over the ages. It's not even funny.
But people don't realize Cleopatra was Greek.
Huh?
No, they don't realize.
Yeah, she was Greek. They're thinking, oh, she's the big African queen. Cleopatra was descendant from the Ptolemies. She was Greek. She wasn't really North African Egyptian.
That's the first I'm hearing about it, actually. I hadn't put that together.
No, she was the last of the Ptolemies, and Ptolemy was left by Alexander. So she wasn't really of the native culture or the blood.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
She was Greek. She was Greek. Anyway, I think, are we coming up to the half, Tony?
I was going to give it a little bit longer because we got off to a little bit of a late start. So let me ask, first of all, where can people find you on the internet? How can they get in touch with you and contact you? And yeah, let's start with that. Where can we find you?
Well, it's Lilith Dorsey, Lilith Dorsey.com, and that's my website, but they can find me on YouTube, on Twitter. I'm so dying to become Insta-famous, so they can find me on Instagram. They can find me, there's...
You're already famous.
Oh, thank you.
We love you. Yeah,
everything. I'm pretty much everywhere that a person could be.
Okay, also her books can be found on Amazon, and that is the Voodoo and African Caribbean Paganism, the African American Ritual Cookbook, Love and Magic, over 250 spells and potions for getting it, keeping it, and making it last.
Yeah, girl.
And a bunch of other things. You can find them on Amazon. We're going to take a little break and be back, and I'd like to discuss how voodoo can be used in spirituality and in finding who we are. Marie, where can you be found?
I can be found on my website, www.mariebargas, that's B as in bank, ARGAS.com, or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter under Marie Bargas.
And I am not found. We're going to see you in a few minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you even more.
Marie and Tony will be right back as we take a break for messages from our sponsors.
Sokol Radio aims to provide a wide range of hosts, shows, views and opinions while endeavouring to maintain our three vital principles of openness, honesty and integrity, covering all aspects of spiritualism, mediumship, healing, personal and spiritual development for all faiths, religions and walks of life as a way of life. As part of our spiritualistonline.com, Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum, Sokol Radio brings you the latest and honest news, views and names in the spiritual field. Check us out and tune in to Sokol Radio on spiritualistonline.com. Join in the Sokol Radio chat room on the Circle of Mediums radio show. 6 mediums, healers, psychics, tarot, astrologers, spiritual workers every week, sharing spirit messages, development techniques, guidance and much more. Live in the Sokol Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com, or simply listen in at tunein.com. Search Sokol Radio. Would you like to contribute readings, thoughts, teachings and time to this 2-hour show? Get in touch at sokolradioshows@gmail.com. Spirit Weavers with Jodie White Wolf Morrison, a weekly 1-hour radio show, Thursdays 8 p.m. UK time, featuring those who are dedicated to living their spirituality and exploring how that is woven into their everyday lives through their work, practices and beliefs. Various SOC members from Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum sharing their abilities, knowledge and more. Dates and times will vary. Live in the Sokol Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com, or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for Sokol Radio. Premium membership on spiritualistonline.com. Join our Teaching Lyceum, classes and courses to certificate and diploma levels. It's an option, not an obligation. Still only £30 per year for unlimited seminars, guest sessions, members' moments, voice members included on radio chats and TV shows, full certificate courses and qualifications, members' promotions of sites, books and services. discounts on sock services, one-on-one teaching, private classes, members-only Facebook. Upgrade your membership today. Joint family group options. See spiritualistonline.com. Beyond the Veil with Terry Oz. Check it out first Monday, monthly, 2 p.m. UK time. Terry shares her experiences and love of spiritual communication with those from beyond the veil. Join us live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. Advertise with SOC Radio. 10, 15, 20 or 30-second jingles, adverts or promotions, all going out live on SOC Radio. Promote your services, churches, groups or events at the best rates online. Work with us on shows or promotion and you could get your jingles absolutely free. For this and more, contact Julie at socradioshows@gmail.com. Join us on SOC Radio. Host your own online radio show. We welcome inquiries and ideas for your own show live right here on SOC Radio. Share your knowledge, thoughts and abilities. Bring your ideas to life with us here on SOC Radio and spiritualistonline.com. Or join any of our shows as a special guest, speaker or presenter. Check out the liveliest spiritual chat show, the Spiritualist Open Circle Panel Forum, a monthly discussion show, or the Circle of Mediums, a weekly show sharing spirit messages and teaching all aspects of mediumship and psychic abilities. Or join our Christina on the monthly astrology show. Contact us now at socradioshows@gmail.com. Join us on SOC Radio. Host your own online radio show. We welcome inquiries and ideas for your own show live right here on SOC Radio. Share your knowledge, thoughts and abilities. Bring your ideas to life here with us on SOC Radio and spiritualistonline.com. Or join any of our shows as a special guest, speaker or presenter. Check out the liveliest spiritual chat show, the Spiritualist Open Circle Panel Forum, a monthly discussion show, or the Circle of Mediums, a weekly show sharing spirit messages and teaching all aspects of mediumship and psychic abilities. Or join our Christina on the monthly astrology show. Contact us now at socradioshows@gmail.com or facebook.com/SOC Radio. Spiritualistonline.com. Online since 2002. Teaching all aspects of personal and spiritual development. Free to all with audio-video chat rooms, members forums, and SOC Radio live shows on site. The Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum, a global oasis for spiritual awareness, development, attainment, imparting knowledge, thoughts, ideas to inspire. One site, linking a whole network of spiritually informative, educational and interactive services, encompassing every faith, path, walk, religion as one. Your membership on spiritualistonline.com. Join our teaching lyceum, classes and courses to certificate and diploma levels. It's an option, not an obligation. Still only £30 per year for unlimited seminars, guest sessions, members' moments, voice members included on radio chats and TV shows, full certificate courses and qualifications, members' promotions of sites, books and services, discounts on SOC services, one-on-one teaching, private classes, members-only Facebook. Upgrade your membership today. Joint family group options. See spiritualistonline.com.
Welcome back to the lab as Marie and Tony teach you all about magic.
Go.
Hello and welcome back to Magic Lab Academy. We are speaking with Voodoo Authority Lilith Dorsey, and my co-host is Hollywood Witch Marie Bargas. Marie, ask some questions.
We were talking very briefly about dark symbolism over the break, and I would like you to explain the difference between Baron Samitier and Baron Samedi, are they the same or are they different?
Well, I mean, I think that it's hard to explain because each temple or Humfor down in Haiti operates, whatever they say in your Humfor is the truth and how it goes. So just as we were saying that some people see Dambala and Simbi as the same Loa, some people say Baron Cemetery and Baron Samedi as the same. Obviously, it's a different name. One's cemetery and one's Saturday. But, how you would leave them offerings and things like that are very similar. They're both seen as the oldest male in each cemetery. So when you go to leave offerings to them, you find the oldest male grave, and that's where you leave the offerings. I think a lot of people get them confused with some of the other deities, but he's the traditional one with the top hat, and he has sunglasses on where one eye is gone in the sunglasses and one eye is blacked out. So that's representative of him seeing into both worlds at the same time. So it's like one eye is looking at the visible world and one eye is looking at the invisible world. So that's why you see the sunglasses. He usually has some sort of white makeup on. He's offered cigars most often, and rum is another thing that people like to leave him for. It's not seen as a negative thing, though. I do want to say this, because a lot of times things that have to do with death are associated as negative things. Somebody told me not too long ago they were given Baron Samedi image representation for their child to sort of protect them at night, which I thought was an unusual choice, but it also makes sense in the sense of you don't want your child being taken off to the land of the cemetery any sooner than they're meant to go. So it was sort of a protective figure so that the child wouldn't be taken to the cemetery.
What is the importance of the cemetery or the burial ground in voodoo?
Well, I think that it's so important to us. Ancestors are everything. I always say ancestors first, last, and always, because we have to remember where we came from, especially people of color, people who are, recognizing the history of this tradition, all these traditions, Afro-diasporan traditions. We have to realize what our ancestors went through, the horrors of slavery and, war and being relocated and being separated from our families. So I think that, the knowledge that we can gain from them, even though they've passed, sort of allows us to have ties with those things that went before. And, if your ancestors learned a lesson, then you don't need to learn it again. You can just get their insight and wisdom. The same thing, how we should be treating our elders. If our elders have a lot of information and knowledge to pass along us, and ancestors are just elders that have, eldered out of the system.
I like the similarity between voodoo and Hinduism in that respect, because when we worship Shiva, a lot of cults or sects of Shaivism begin their initiations in the cemetery, because Lord Shiva meditates in the cemetery when he is in his yogic form, or Yogeshvara. And it's seen for us as a gateway between worlds. And so the appropriate altar would be in the place of the dead, because that is the twilight world.
No, that is very similar, because I think that it's definitely a liminal space, a space of in-between, where you can access other worlds and other knowledge and blessings, So it's very important in all Afro-diasporan traditions, especially voodoo and Haitian voodoo, that the ancestors are very important to us and must be given frequent offerings and remembered, not just at their special times of year, but, regularly on a weekly basis, or in some cases a daily basis.
But why do we give food to the gods when they're dead? Do they take energy from it, or is it just symbolic?
Oh, they definitely take energy from it. When you leave an offering of food, you can look at it and, maybe it's the kind of thing. I had a friend who had offered some fruit once and it was still there and it was fine 2 weeks later. Or you can offer some fruit and it can be like all sunken and disgusting after one day. I'm not saying leave it there forever, but you can see how the offering is taken and how it's received, and if it gets funky really quickly, then you need another offering. If it's there and they accept it and it just remains, shining and beautiful and looks like you put it there a minute ago, then they're accepting that offering and great blessings will definitely follow.
Cool. Tony?
I used to do vampire theater, and I know that you're a filmmaker, so I just have to ask. When I was a kid, my uncle used to call and say, Anthony, Zucco's on. George Zucco. I need to know, when you watch an old movie like I Walked with a Zombie and you see Bela Lugosi or Tom Conway, and the way they portrayed the voodoo back then in those black and white films, what do you see?
Oh, I'm sad. Most of the time I'm very, very sad because it's very stereotypical. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, that's the only contact they have with the religion is this Hollywood image. I was just talking before about how we have a deity called Simbi. That was the name of Marie Laveau's snake, Simbi. A lot of people believe that that's how it got bastardized over the years and became zombie into this weird, image where people didn't really know what they were doing or where they were going. Now, they had people that were under the influence of a certain series of, I guess for lack of a better word, drugs and natural medicines that made them do all the things that you think a zombie's going to do. Not eat people, but it would approximate death. And they couldn't remember what their name was, and they couldn't remember their memory and, things like that. And they would be put to work as a farmhand, that was sort of a punishment that people would give to people, is to turn them into this state. And in Jamaica, they call it duppies. And, there's a lot of these, different legends about people who are sort of creepy and scary and not all there and things like that. But it was, it was what happened. But it got turned into this Hollywood conception of something that's going to eat you and bite your head off. Now, that said, I love, zombie movies and I think they're hilarious, but it has nothing to do with voodoo at all, really. In the day-to-day things, and there's much more beauty and power and grace to the religion than I think a lot of these early movies set us out thinking about it, unfortunately.
Did any of the early movies catch it? And then Marie's got a bunch more about this. Did any of the old movies actually catch any of the beauty?
In my first book, I go in great detail about the ones that I think people should bother to watch and shouldn't bother to watch. There's none that does it really great. Somebody was mentioning to me there's an early Cecil B. DeMille called Madame Satan, where they're all doing this weird voodoo thing. And my favorite line from that is, even the Gree couldn't cure the VD, which I thought was
Oh, God. I think
yeah, it's hilarious. But, again, it's
just a reason for being.
Right.
Can you tell our listeners why you wear white in voodoo?
Well, I think it's, again, it's a symbol of purity, of grace. I think there's a practical reason, you know what I mean? And this is going to sound funny, but I think it's because it's so hard to keep clean. That in a way it's sort of a spiritual challenge, because anybody who's ever been to a ceremony knows there's a lot of up and down, there's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of, sweating going on, there's a lot of eating and feasting going on, so it's very hard to keep them clean, and they're supposed to be clean. So I think there's a level of, dedication and devotion that just requires that you're keeping these, things clean. And then on the other hand, yes, it does represent peace and purity and sacredness, not just in the voodoo tradition. You can look at other traditions where white is that color.
So why do you have to wear white for a year?
That's La Regla Lacumi / Santeria, which, if you're in it, you don't call it that, but I say that because I know probably some of the listeners understand it as Santeria. So basically, because you have to be clean. So you spend that year in whites being clean. So that, in addition to wearing the white things, I mean, some houses, my sister had a friend who he couldn't even touch anything. Like if somebody hands you a pen or something, they have to put that down on the table and then he could pick it up. I was like, he was in New York. I was like, well, how does he go on the subway? He just didn't go out, I think, into large crowds of people, for that year. So some houses are like that. Other houses, you just have to wear white for a year. Usually, unless you've been married for a long time, you'll have to be celibate for a year also. There's a lot of other taboos and things that you have to do during that year. And that's part of the initiation to be seated, which is your asiento initiation. So that's for, being a santero or a santera. So that's where it comes from. And everybody has a year in whites. It's not like, oh, this person has their year in whites. No, everybody has to have a year in whites.
Tony?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the transformations that happen in voodoo. Is there also any kind of shape-shifting?
There is shape-shifting. There's definitely shape-shifting, and I think it goes back to Africa. Personally, I've always been very fond of shape-shifting. I think that, to be honest, I think that it comes from, I had a hard life when I was growing up and there was a lot of trauma. So I think that, changing into somebody else or becoming invisible was just a life skill for me before it was a psychic skill. You know what I mean? Because children who are in trauma, it's helpful to them to have protective mechanisms. And I think those things, got very strong in me from an early age, and I learned how to do those things. It's funny, as an adult, I'm kind of unlearning them. But so personally for me, I mentioned invisibility in there because I feel like that's one level of shape-shifting. Are you the kind of person who walks into a room and nobody sees them? That's a level of invisibility. If you're going to work on it, see how far you can go without anybody noticing you, see how far, what you can do. And I think that's like a beginning level of it. But also I wanted to mention in Africa, there's a deity called Oya, who also finds her way into the Lukumi/Santeria pantheon, who is renowned as a shapeshifter. There are a lot of stories about her, one where she's in the woods and she shapeshifts into a gazelle or some other kind of, deer, and goes running around in the woods and having a ball. And then she puts her skin back on in order to go out to the marketplace and see who's selling what and who's doing what. So there's this whole changing thing where she can become, one animal or another face. And that's a theme, not just with Oya, but Oya is the primary Orisha that does do that, I think. But there are images, Oya also is I don't want to say a cross-dresser, but there's a story where she puts a beard and I mentioned before Shango. Oh, thank you, Sirens.
It's okay. It's perfect.
Tony, your ride's here.
I know, right? Shango, the deity of fire. Anyway, she puts on Shango's clothes and she glues his beard onto her face and she rides into battle on his horse to sort of, disguised as him in order to fool everybody he's in battle with and sort of take his place while he escapes out the back and goes to another town. So there's this sort of, transgender cross-dressing thing that she has going on, which again is not really the kind of well, you do get it in some other religions, but I feel like we got a whole story about it and she's renowned for it. So there's this sort of, and she's in charge of the masquerades too, which
Right.
As the head of the ancestors, which are called the Egungun, there are whole masquerade societies in Nigeria that do Egungun masquerades. And, she's part of that, this sense of, dressing up to be somebody else or to be seen as somebody else in order to accomplish different things or access different realms.
So back to the snake theory or the snake theme. Tell me about your hypnotic powers.
Okay, I like this.
Come on, Dambala girl. I know you have hypnotic
Right,
powers.
right,
Have that
okay.
Dambala, yeah. Tell me about it, baby.
Yeah, right. I think that there's definitely some hypnotic energy going on there's a sacred dance that people do for Dambala called the Yanvalu. And the Yanvalu is a serpent dance. For those who are belly dancers, they'll be familiar with serpent arms. And it's very slow and very calculated and in a way very hypnotizing because we're talking about, repeating very concise, precise movements over and over again that mimic sort of the movements of a serpent back and forth, these undulations that can be very hypnotizing both for someone watching it or someone doing it, and I think what people miss about some of the ritual dances is the fact that it is this repetition that allows you to access other realms. I was talking before with the drum that, the rhythms circle around each other and repeat and circle around each other and take off in small little teeny ways. And that's what allows us to access the other realms, and the same thing with the dances. I studied with, if there's any dancers listening, I studied with Julio Jean, who is a student of Catherine Dunham, who was one of the first, Haitian anthropologist dancers to go to Haiti, in the 40s and 50s. She actually made films about these dances and instructional videos. Yay her! She made instructional videos in the 50s about paganism. You can find them online, but you can see some of the movements that I'm talking about and how hypnotic they are and how transformative that they can be if you do them over and over again.
So can you explain the voodoo houses, I guess, to us? I think there's, and help me out here because I'm certainly not an expert. There's Rada, and what are the other ones?
There's Rada, there's Petro, there's Congo, there's different lineages of spirits. And it used to be in Haiti. It's not so much anymore, but it used to be, traditionally you would get initiated into, say, a Rada house. So those were spirits, if you look back geographically, those were spirits that came from Arada or Dahomey in West Africa. So a lot of those tribal spirits were transported to Haiti, and they became assigned to certain groups of people who would worship them in their spiritual houses known as humfors. And therefore, the spirits that were worshipped in that house would be Rada spirits. So you would have like Erzuli Frida, which is traditionally a Rada spirit, or some of the other, ones have aspects of them that could be part of the Rada pantheon. So some people like to assign it to, Rada was very airy spirits. Petro obviously means fire, so it was very fiery spirits. Congo was more watery, so they were more watery spirits, things like that. So there are slight differences, like the Petro ones. I mean, there's Erzuli Garouge. I mentioned before Erzuli, the deity of love. Erzuli Garouge is a Petro spirit. She's got red eyes that are sort of burning with fire. So she's like totally fierce. Another one of these, female spirits that's like fierce face, as I used to say to the dog, fierce face. So she's definitely a stronger spirit. All the Petro spirits are more stronger. And then you'll see different things in the ceremonies. In Petro ceremonies, they'll use things that are more fiery. Maybe the rum will have hot peppers in it, or maybe the veve, which is the ritual symbols that we do on the ground. Some of the Petro spirits, you do the veve in gunpowder. As another motorcycle goes by, you could do the veve in gunpowder, or in pepper or things like that again will sort of heat up the spirits and give that sort of fiery energy to your spirit. But they are all based originally on what tribal people and what energies and Loa were transported from Africa to those parts of Haiti.
Tony?
I was still on the dance. You worked with Dr. John's Night Tripper Voodoo show, and I'd like to know a little bit about your other choreography and that, and all of that, and how it plays into both the magic and the magic of music.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun dancing for Mac. That's Dr. John. And I was really honored because, I mentioned the Jan Valou. He wanted somebody to bring the Jan Valou back to his Night Tripper Voodoo show. The woman who had done it originally in the 70s, they couldn't find her. Had some woman come up in my face and go, I know where she is. How come she didn't get the gig? I'm sorry.
Oh, my God. Well, I don't want to interrupt, but as I'm listening, I'm smelling this very, very fragrant perfume. It almost smells like this oil from Jamaica called couscous.
Oh, interesting.
I have no idea why, but there's like this fragrance coming. I'm sorry, girl, but the snakes came by and now it smells good. I don't know why.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad about that. Couscous, if I remember, couscous has a lot of amber in it, doesn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I'm like, what do I have going around here? I do a happiness water that's Florida water, rose water, and amber. So that smells really nice. And then I think I also have some frankincense going on here for the solstice. So that could have something to do with it.
It's probably the frankincense mixed with something else.
Yeah.
And I can taste honey in the back of my throat.
I am an Oshun. I'm definitely a honey girl. We mentioned the Orishas before. My head spirit is Orisha Oshun, so that makes sense. And we're talking about dance, and I'm talking about the Jan Valou. So in addition to love, Oshun is also in charge of the dance. There's all these, Pataki or stories about her where she's, the ultimate seductress that can, do whatever with the dance, and the sweet honey that's on her hips. So that could be it.
Yeah, but there's like beautiful fragrance, the taste of honey in the back of my throat, and the snakes are kind of hanging out going, hey man, what's up?
That's beautiful. Hey man, what's up? Yeah. All right, I finished answering the Dr. John question. So I wanted to go in, and we were talking about the Jan Valou, which is, as I mentioned, a sacred serpent dance, But one of the things when the Jan Valou was done in New Orleans in the late 1800s, when the original Dr. John Montagny, who the modern Dr. John, jazz musician with all the Grammys, took his name from, would do it as a dance of coded resistance. So what you would do is sort of a similar dance. You'd put your hands on your arms like a soldier to sort of mimic the epaulets, and then you'd mimic chopping off his head. So it was this dance of like resistance that they would do because it was an oppressed society. There was a lot of rough things going on in the 1860s. There were a lot of laws against drumming and dancing and any kind of pagan worship in public, which is what, a lot of the slaves that were brought here in the 1800s, that was the last little piece of their culture that they still could have, so they were resisting any way that they could. And one of the ways that they did that was through dance. So when I told Mac that, he was like, yeah, I want you to do these dances for the show. So I got to choreograph for him and do a lot of dances for the show. And that was really wonderful at Jazz Fest and Bonnaroo and things like that. And it was nice to be able to bring those sacred dances to an audience that's probably not used to them at all. So I'm very happy about that.
Was there actually any sort of line of the Dr. Johns?
Any sort of what?
Of a line. Were there descendants and ascendants, and was there?
Oh, is he related to the original Dr. John? I don't believe so.
But is there a Dr. John lineage that goes before him that went back?
Are you thinking of Dr. Buzzard?
Maybe.
Well, there probably are a lot of people related to Dr. John Montagny, the original one in the 1860s. Yeah, because they have the census records from it. And, New Orleans is like the gumbo. New Orleans is one of those places where everybody's related to everybody. So I'm sure there are a lot of people that are related to him, but I do not believe that the modern Dr. John is related to him.
What is the significance of the red serpent?
There's a Damballa La Flambeau. We mentioned before the Petro spirits. There's a fiery Damballa that some people have sort of equated to, Kundalini, like how it, has to do with passions that rise up from our root chakra and that energy of primal fire and creation that comes from the serpent.
Because I saw a red serpent kind of like, hey, what's up? Okay.
Speaking of the serpent, what about the rainbow? What is the rainbow?
So we're talking about Damballa.
Back to Damballa.
Right, back to Damballa again. Okay. That's the serpent and the rainbow, popularized by the book and later the movie. The myth is that Damballa was the great white serpent that traveled under the waters from Africa to the New World, and Aida Weda was his wife that made the crown of the rainbow, and they met here in the New World and intertwined and began the beautiful religion that is voodoo. So that's the short version of the myth about the serpent and the rainbow.
I think it has to do with lineage because the two serpents twirled around each other are DNA.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, I saw that in my head, and it was like, wait a minute, that's DNA, guys. That's talking about a mixing of two bloodlines.
Yep.
I don't usually do this, Lilith, because I am a medium myself, but I'm like seeing all kinds of stuff around you. I don't usually do this. I usually just ask questions, so.
That's fine.
I'm a little, maybe it's because it's solstice. Oh my God.
It could be.
Can we talk about, and I want to talk to you about this because it tickles me, but it's a black moon, and one of the astrological phenomenon in the sky tonight is called Black Moon Lilith. Can you tell our listeners about that a little bit?
Okay, for those who are into astrology, Black Moon Lilith is usually representative of the dark things, as I call it, Dark Moon Lilith. Also, she's representative. I don't like the descriptions that most people ascribe to it. The same way I don't like the way most people ascribe negative things to dark things. But she's sort of the feminine side of things. She's the night side of things. She's the opposite of the light side of things. I don't necessarily see that as negative.
I love Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith times are when I'm the most sexy. That's when I wear red lipstick and black nail polish. When I'm a naughty girl.
Yeah, it has to do with sexuality and sensuality and femininity. Like if you look at it in your chart, it has to do with your sexual relationships and how those play out and things like that. So, it definitely represents everything that the goddess Lilith represents, if you remove all the bad stuff,
Right.
the sensuality, the passion, the sort of feminine power that was denied for so long that, is really ancient and primal and within all of us.
Well, one thing that we've touched on intermittently through our shows is Baphomet. And from my experience, Baphomet is really the divine feminine wearing a goat mask, because Baphomet has an awesome rack. Okay?
You're right.
Yes, and it was told to me and explained to me years ago that femininity and divine sexuality were demonized because of the power of Kundalini itself. So we've got the snake, the gorgeous breasts, and the goat head. Baphomet, what do you think?
No, I think there's definitely something to that. I do. Because you do get a lot of the same imagery with Lilith even. You get Lilith with horns, you get Lilith with, all these negative kinds of things. So I believe that. I totally believe that, because Baphomet does represent strong sexuality, but it's probably easier for a lot of people to swallow that in a male package. But I don't think it is in a male package. And if we look at it historically, it's certainly not in a just male package.
Well, when you look at Baphomet, Babylon, and Kali, how can you not recognize a similarity between these? And then you go one step further into Isis, who wears the serpent. Actually, no, Isis wears the vulture crown. Isis wears the vulture crown. But you have that Egyptian mythology with the duat and the serpent that curls around the world. How do you feel about the transmigration of myth?
What do you mean, how do I feel about it?
I mean, do you think that it's obvious, or do you think that we need to look deeper into it? Because I think
we need to look deeper. Well, I think it's obvious, but I think that everybody's not going to accept it as obvious. Like everything else, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard shaking up people's established ideas and welcoming. I think there's more welcoming of the divine feminine than there ever has been, but I still think there's a lot more ways to go.
Tony?
I was no, you can take it on. Tracy's asking me to. I have to find out what she wants. But actually, I actually wanted to get back to what's going on in New York, because we'll be leaving fairly in another 10 minutes. Who else in? I'm sorry. Who else is going to be there? And I'd like to know more about Queen Mother Imaku, who'll be performing, I believe.
Oh, yes, she is performing. I think she's also doing a workshop, too. I don't know if her workshop is on Saturday or if it's on Friday or Sunday, because there's a lot of things. But, yes, she's a chemeticist that I've only worked with her once or twice. Oddly enough, we're both on the Tower of the Burrows. It's a New York City tarot deck with photographs, so that's very interesting. But I'm excited. I'm excited. I think one of the things that I'm really, honored that I'm part of and that Star put together, there are a lot of people of color represented at this event, like New York itself, and that makes me very, very happy.
It was put together by Star Ravenhawk, Luna Rojas, and Arlene Fried. Who have you worked with, and what kind of works have you done?
Oh, I'm looking at this. Look at this. My editor's going to be there, too. Judica is going to be there doing Spirits and Successful Spellcasting. Yeah, Judica is my editor at Wiser and a good friend of mine, a dear friend of mine for almost 20 years. So that's going to be wonderful. Star Ravenhawk is also teaching a workshop, so that's great. Like I said, Christian Day and Brian Kane are going to be there from New Orleans. That's wonderful. Crystal Madison is going to be there. She's an amazing witch from Sleepy Hollow doing container and jar magic. This is going to be some serious magic going on here. I'm very happy.
Wow.
Actually, I'm glad you...
Hexfest? Are you going to be at Hexfest, or have you been at Hexfest?
I was at Hexfest the first year they had it, and I'm going to be there, not this summer, but I'm going to be there in 2018.
Cool.
Actually, I'd like to tell us a little bit about Wiser. I remember Wiser books, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's funny. It's such a weird thing to me that I'm actually at Weiser Books. You know, they just had I mentioned Judica. She was there with me. They had the memorial for Donald Weiser, because he just passed. And, so many of us told stories about being young kids. I remember being a teenager and going into the bookstore and looking at all the Magick books. And it was so amazing and so fascinating to me to see all that magic in one place because, I think, what some of the younger witches don't realize is that back in the 80s, there wasn't a ton of magic stores everywhere. We didn't have Amazon to go online and get magic books. So when you found somewhere that really had a treasure of both, new magic workings from people that were actually doing magic, and also, he had a huge rare book section. So that was also something that was wonderful. I remember him yelling at me a couple of times about don't touch this because I was a little kid, so who wanted to touch the big magic books. But it's such an honor. My friend Theodic, who does the Witch's Almanac, he said this almost the same thing as me, which is, it's such an honor to be published by Weiser, who for so long has been a standard in the occult book industry. It's such a powerful thing. So that's wonderful, and I'm really proud to be there.
Tell me about what you've been doing lately with Pathos.
Oh, I still have my blog on Pathos. It's going strong. There's almost 500 posts on there. If anybody wants to see me write on something, let me know because I'm really stretching it here out to 500 posts. But I got a lot of my recipes up there. There's always stuff about what I'm doing. Like this weekend, I'm going to be in a shoot for the Brown Girl Tarot, which is all women of color tarot that's going to be done here in the city. I'm going to be the Hierophant card, so I'm all excited about that.
Cool.
Yeah, there's only a few cards I would have been okay with being, so I'm like, okay, the Hierophant, that makes sense. Yes. I have a lot of traditional knowledge. I think that'll be interesting to be represented there. But yeah, there's always whatever I'm doing is on the blog. Plus, like I said, recipes. And also, I have a lot of interest in herbs. So there's a whole bunch of herbal posts on there and a lot of divination posts. I like to interview other diviners and psychics and things like that. So there's a real whole bunch of stuff on there for people who want to find out more about, really any element of spirituality.
Would you be interested in interviewing another herbalist?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to hook you up. No.
Yeah.
Our producer, Tracy, once sees a Buddha around you and wants to know what's your connection to the Buddha?
Yeah, right, Tracy? There's tons of stuff around you, Lilith.
Okay.
Thank you, Tracy, because I'm not the only one.
It's funny. Probably a lot of your listeners will remember Isaac Bonowitz. His son was staying here for a couple of days with me last month, and Arthur Bonowitz walked in. He goes, "Whoa, there's a lot of stuff in here."
Yeah, girl.
I was like, yes, there is a lot of stuff in here. Buddhas most often, and hoodoo and voodoo are used for luck. We use them for, there's a lot of spells and things like that where we do lucky Buddha things and lucky Buddha oils and lucky Buddha altars and magics like that. There's also some, it's pretty much, there's ancestor magic too that we do with the Buddha. You mentioned before Hindu's connection to cemeteries. There's certainly a Buddhist connection to cemeteries and the dead, and I think that we honor that. One of the things that I love about New Orleans voodoo, which is what I practice, is that, it incorporates things that we see, that we've seen work for other people, with other people. I had another member of the temple that was Chinese for a long time, and that was wonderful because he would bring a lot of those Buddhist family spirits in with him, and we could incorporate that into the ceremonies. So that's probably the connection.
Oh. So I think that Tracy and I are both going to have to agree that you are a very receptive channel because she and I are both getting things off of you. I mean, just by you talking, which usually doesn't happen on the show.
But it's not surprising.
No. Not at all, especially not with voodoo. Do you find that people that practice voodoo are more open channels than other practices?
Yes and no, I think. I mean, I think because it was a secret religion, it's, a lot of us are used to being secret and not broadcasting, for fear. But I think that lately, now that it's accepted, that it's, something that can come out into the open. And really, I was at an event we have an organization here called Haiti Cultural Exchange, and I was at an event, and about halfway through the talk about, art and music and dance and Haitian culture, I was just like, what's your connection to the religion? And it turned out two of the people on the panel were Mambo priestesses, and the other one was into holistic medicine and food and things like that. So I think it's definitely, even if we weren't allowed to say it before, we're allowed to say it now, so we don't have to keep that stuff, in the broom closet, as they say, like we have for so long.
Absolutely.
We're coming to the end of the show, so I'd like to once again ask you where you can be found online and how people can find you and how they can contact you.
All right. People can find me on lilithdorsey.com, LilithDorsey.com. They can find me. I've got a Lilith Dorsey author page on Facebook that people can check out with all my writings and things like that. I've got a YouTube channel with over 50 videos on there that people can look at if they want to see more about voodoo or hoodoo or music in New Orleans, or there's a whole bunch of different stuff on there. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, and, anywhere you want to find me, I'll be there, like the song.
Okay, she's also a filmmaker, and her books can be found on Amazon. You can either just type in Lilith Dorsey. You can look for Love Magic. And before I get to Marie, Witch Fest will be happening July 14th, 15th, and 16th. It's the 6th annual Witch Fest, and it's Witches Fest. And it'll be between Broadway and Lafayette on Astor Place in New York City. Marie, where can we find you?
You can find me at www.mariebargas, that's B as in bank kids, ARGAS.com, and under Marie Bargas on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
And I'm still in hiding. I want to thank everyone for joining us here on SOC, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us at Magic Lab. See you next time for more conjurings.